Hey guys, Hackersploit here, back again with another video, and welcome to the BlackArch series where I'll be taking you through installing BlackArch, configuring it and getting set up for pen testing, forensics or any other security research that you might be into. Many of you might have realized that I do have a BlackArch video out there, but that was quite a while ago and I really had a bad microphone. So I thought, why not revamp the entire series and sort of bring life to it, because BlackArch is a distro that I haven't covered on this channel and I really like it. So here it is, and let's get started. So for those of you who are unaware of what BlackArch is and what it's used for, here's a bit of an introduction. You can check out their website at black.org. So BlackArch is an Arch Linux based penetration testing distribution for pen testers and security researchers. The repository contains 2,296 tools, which is quite a lot, and you can install the tools individually or in groups, and I'll show you that right now when we're talking about the downloads and the live ISO. So BlackArch is compatible with existing Arch installs, which means you can use the BlackArch script to install it on Arch Linux or any other Arch-based distribution. You can also check out the installation instructions within the guide if you are into installing it and reading the instructions, on a website. Instead of watching this video, you can do that as well. And we can go into the downloads page, a very well organized page, a website, I must say. So in terms of the downloads, you have great organization here. You have live ISOs, the OVA images for hypervisors. So you can download the OVA image if you do plan on running this on VMware, VirtualBox, or any other hypervisor, I believe. QEMU is the other one that's supported. You can also install it on top of Arch Linux, which is done through a script. You can then install it from the ISO, which is what we are doing as well. We also have the ARM versions right over here that allow you to install it on embedded devices and devices like Raspberry Pi, etc. Right? So we're going to be working with the live ISOs. Now, when talking about the OVA images, the reason I'm not downloading and using an OVA image is because I want to take you through the installation process in case you ever want to go through it. If you do plan on using this in a virtual machine, I recommend just downloading the OVA image, but it's also good to know how to install it directly, right? And you have to do it if you are going to be installing this on top of an Arch-based distribution or on Arch Linux itself. So it's about 30 gigabytes. So the total install size is from 30 to about 40 gigabytes. Do take that into consideration when specifying your hard drive or your disk space, rather. So we are going to be working with the live ISO right over here, and this is the complete version. This contains all the packages that we'll be using, so this can be installed offline. However, I do not recommend that. I do recommend that you are connected to the internet. You then have the net install ISO. The net install ISO essentially comes with the base system, and then you can specify what packages you want installed, which is great. So many people like installing Arch Linux primarily using the net install ISO, so setting it up exactly how they want. And that's really the power of Arch for those of you who have installed it and for those of you who use Arch Linux on a daily basis, right? So I've downloaded the live ISO, and that is about 12 gigabytes. So do take that into consideration. So for the purpose of this installation, I'll be doing this on a virtual machine. So I already have the BlackArch VM set up. Let me show you my virtual machine settings. So you can see that I've specified a memory of about 2 gigabytes, which is perfect for me. I'll be setting up swap as well. As for processors, I have 2 processors with 2 cores, giving us 4 cores, which is great. And the network mode I'm in is going to be in bridge because I do want it to connect directly to the physical network and therefore to get an IP assigned so that we can access it even via SSH. That's pretty much all my settings for the VM. Now, in talking about storage, I've specified about 80 gigabytes as I will be also having other files on it, and I'll be installing things like utilities, desktop environments, which will all come in later videos. But make sure to specify disk size or have enough space for you to install other utilities and store various files. I recommend 80 to 100 gigabytes. That's perfectly fine. If you're performing very basic pen testing, if you are going to be storing files, you might want to increase it as you feel fit, right? So I'm just going to hit OK, and we are pretty much good. So let me just power on the virtual machine and let it load up into the installer or into the boot manager. So there we are. So we can boot directly into Arch Linux. That is using standard software or free software. You then have you can also boot into BlackArch Linux. That is using non-free software. We want to stay as far away from that as possible. You can boot into the existing OS if you are planning on dual booting Arch. You can run a mem test, which is great, allows you to test your memory for any issues. You can also check your hardware information, reboot and power off. In our case, we are going to be booting into BlackArch Linux. So I'm going to hit enter right over here. and I'll wait for this to load up. All right, so now we are in the live system. We've successfully booted in. Remember, we now need to install it, and the BlackArch install is done using a script. So by default, you can check out the various desktop environments that it comes with, but more like window managers. So you have i3, OpenBox, Fluxbox. By default, we want to stay with the default configuration, which is using, I think, Fluxbox if I'm not, or OpenBox. I'm not too sure. It's been quite a while. And you can specify your language directly here. So the default credentials for logging in into the live system is root for the username and BlackArch for the password. Right, so I'll just hit enter and we should be into the live system. I'll wait for this to load up. You should see that I've zoomed into the actual size of the screen right now so that you can see exactly what's going on. Right, so if you right click, you have the BlackArch menu, which is pretty much all that you have available to you. As for the terminals, BlackArch uses Xterm and you have different colors, so you can use red, green, yellow and white. And when I'm talking about the colors, I'm referring to the actual color of the font, right? For browsers, we have Firefox and Chromium, so we are sticking to free software. For network, we have the Wicked GTK or GUI manager. So this is your network manager, so we can open that up, and this allows you to manage all your interfaces, connect, disconnect, properties, etc. As for the other options, we have the BlackArch menu, which contains all the pen testing tools. So as I said, we are in the live system, which means we can play around with all of the features, and once you're ready to install, we can begin. Right, so to get started with the install, you want to open up a terminal. I'm just going to load up a red one here. All right, so to synchronize the packages, we type in pacman, and we want to type in a capital S, which is synchronize, and of course a lowercase y there. All right, so it's going to synchronize the package databases, and then we can get started with the installation process. All right, so we'll wait for all of the packages to be updated here, or all the databases to be updated. There we are. We're almost done. BlackArch, and we're ready to go. All right, so installing BlackArch is extremely simple. All we need to type in is BlackArch install. Now, when many of you actually talk about the installer script having issues, you can configure the installer script by going to the actual directory. So that is under, let me use nano, that is under user bin BlackArch install. I believe, is it install or installer? I believe it is install. So if I hit enter, so yeah, this is the installer script. You can configure it if you are experiencing any issues. In my case, I simply want to type in BlackArch install, and that should start the installation process for us. So I'm going to hit enter, and there we are. Welcome to the BlackArch Linux installer. It's going to ask you to specify one from the available installation modes. So you can install from the BlackArch repository, and that is done online. You can do it from the live ISO, which is what we have, and that's what we're going to be using. And you can also install it from the sources, which is what you would be doing if you're using the net install. In our case, we're installing it from the live ISO, so we don't have to download any of the packages and files. We're going to hit option 2, hit enter. As for the available output modes, we have quiet and verbose. Verbose is going to output or give us an output of what's going on during the installation. So MKFS, Pacman, all the various logs of data will be displayed to us. Of course, we want to have that in case we have any trouble installing a particular package. We want to know about that. For the locale, you can set a locale. You can also list the available locales. In our case, I'm going for the default locale, which is English US. So the default locale can be selected by hitting enter. All right, and that is the default locale. As for the key map, again, you can list the available key maps, and you can select the default one. So I'm going to set a key map. It's going to ask for a default key map. So we're going to say US. You can specify UK, French, etc. So US, that is the default one. I'm going to enter. And it's going to ask me for my host name. I'll just call something my box, something like black box, something like that. As for the hard drive setup, it's going to list all your available hard drives for installation. Now, when talking about drives and the amount points in Linux, it's very simple. SD stands for storage device, and then you have the storage device and the lettering for the mount points. So if I had another drive, they would be SDA and SDB, right? So storage device A, storage device B. If I had a third drive, it would be storage device C. In our case, we only have one drive, and we need to select that one. So I'm going to say SDA. Hit enter. It's going to ask us if we wish to install BlackArch Linux with any other operating system like Windows or any other Linux. So it's asking us if we are performing a dual boot. We are not performing a dual boot, but the reason it asks this is so that it does not interfere with the MBR for Windows or the master boot record for Windows, which is extremely important. And it's great to see that BlackArch offers this option so that you don't mess up your master boot record. In our case, I'm just going to hit no. and because I am not dual booting, now it's going to start the partitioning process. So it's going to ask us if we want to create partitions with CF disk. So the root partition, the boot partition, and the swap partition. I'm going to hit yes, and I'll show you how to do that right now. Start with an in-memory zeroed partition table. Yes, I want to do that, and I hit enter. For the label type, let us use the standard, which is DOS. Hit enter, and right over here we have our partitioner. Alright, so this is extremely simple to partition, especially with BlackArch, because there is a sort of like a graphical experience to it. So we have free space. You can see that we have the device, the boot, whether or not it is the bootable partition. You have the amount of sectors and the size, and of course in this partition manager you have your the abbreviation G is for gigabyte and M is for megabyte, as you'll see in a second, and the ID type, right? So we want to hit new, so I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to ask us for the partition size. So the first partition we want to create is our boot partition. This is where the grub bootloader is going to be stored. I like giving this about 1 gigabyte or 500 megabytes because that's exclusively going to be used by the grub bootloader. So there we are. We have 500 megabytes, and you can see maybe followed by M for megabytes, G for gigabytes, or T for terabytes, right? So you can also configure sectors if you want. I'm going to specify 500 megabytes, and this is going to be a primary partition. I'm going to hit enter. So the partition type is fine. Linux is fine. That means it's going to use the latest one, which is XT4. That is the latest format. We want to make this device bootable, which is important. So we want to navigate using the arrow keys onto bootable and hit enter, and something interesting happens. You can see that we get this little asterisk here, which tells us that SDA1, which is our boot drive, or our boot partition, is now bootable, and that's important because that's where grub is going to be stored, right? So now we need to go into the free space, and you can do that by navigating using the down arrow key, and we want to hit new. We now want to create our